Okay, continuing on. Formula functions. An MP formula function accepts either one or more arguments and returns a result. This is applied or assigned to another variable. For example, gear equals f range 1, speed. String 2 equals L case string. Formula functions are part of the MP language. You cannot define your own functions. The MP language provides a math library that includes the following types of functions: arithmetic, trigonometry, arithmetic, trigonometry, 2D intersection, vector and matrix, and string and file manipulation. Some formula functions take the value of the left side of the equal sign and apply it to one of the arguments. This is contrary to normal convention. And we'll see that when we start getting into some of the vector and matrix math. Post comments. A post comment is used in your post to document any information the post writer may feel is needed. The pound symbol marks the start of a comment. Everything on the line that follows is considered part of the comment. For example, P tool table, pound, tool table output. Because the comment ends at the end of the line in your post, multi-line blocks of comments must have a pound character at the beginning of each line. Note, these are distinct from NC comments that are intended to be output as comments in your NC code. Post comments that are indicated by a pound character are ignored by MPDLL and have no effect on your NC output. So these are literally comments for you as either the user of the post or the developer of the post. Think of it like a trail of breadcrumbs, right? Or a description of what you're intending to do with a certain line or section of code. Formats. Format definitions describe how a number's value will be formatted when it is output. For example, as an integer or a decimal value, the number of decimal places, whether leading and or trailing zeros are output, and other properties. Posts typically include format definitions for both inch and metric output. In addition to the format definitions, another series of statements is used to assign a specific format definition to specific variables. See Formatting Numeric Variables on page 74 to learn more. String select functions. The string select function is a powerful feature of the MP language that allows the post processor to select one string variable from a list based on the value of a numeric variable, and then assign it to a target variable. This lets you use a number as an index to look up string values. Since the G-codes that you output to your NC program are typically strings, for example, G0, and the NCI G-codes are numbers, the string select functions let you convert numeric G-codes from the NCI file to properly formatted strings in your NC program. Based on the NCI G-code, a string variable is selected and placed in the target string variable for output. One advantage of this function is the output of the string variable is controlled by the modality of the numeric variable. For example, if the NCI G-code read by MPDLL is 0, the NC output might be G0 if the variable's modality dictates output, or no output if it doesn't. String select functions are often organized around groups of mutually exclusive G-codes. For example, cutter compensation, off, left, right. The generic Fanuc 3x mil post provides the following string selectors. There's a string selector for motion G-code, so a string select function that selects between G0, G1, G2, G3, or G4. Work plane G-code, G17, 18, or 19. Inch or metric, G20 or G21. Reference return, G28 or G30. Cutter compensation, G40, G41, or G42. All of the can drill cycle G-codes. Absolute or incremental. Reference height can cycle, G98 or G99. Spindle codes, M3, M4, or M5, and Colin. You can also create your own string selectors. See string select function on page 71 to learn more. User prompts. You can create questions or user prompts that will be displayed to the Mastercam end user when they use your post. These will pause post-processing until the user responds. Your post can capture the user input and assign it to a variable where it can be accessed by other routines in your post. A unique method is used to trigger a user prompt. The post function for user prompt FQ is declared and a trigger placed on a post line in your post. The trigger is not a variable, but is a combination of the letter Q and the matching number of the post function for question, for example, Q1. When the trigger is encountered as an output statement, MPDLL pauses, displays the prompt text, and waits for the user's response. See how prompt questions work elsewhere in the MP documentation PDF for more information. How is an MP post organized? Organization in this context refers to the order in which post comments, declarations, post blocks, and statements should occur, or sometimes must occur in your post. As the MP post language has evolved, the organization requirements have become less stringent. Although not strictly required, the organization guidelines presented here will make it easier to understand and maintain your posts. Note, please refer to the generic Fanuc 3x mil post for code examples. In general, posts should be organized into 4 major areas. The header area contains the header line that is required by MPDLL, plus a series of comments with information about your post. This is not P header. This doesn't have anything to do with output. This is the top of the post itself. So if we look at, we're looking at generic Haas 3x mil, but it is functionally identical to generic Fanuc 3x mil. What we're talking about is the post version line. So this has to be at the top of every post. Gives the post version. Each of these is a numeric parameter. So this V19, P0 lets us know that this is a mil post, I believe. It's either the P0 or the E1. One of these lets us know that it's a mil product. The T here, by the way, is simply a timestamp that is encoded. Yeah, P, that's right. P0 is the mil. This is an encoded timestamp that is the time and date that the post processor was last converted. So if you change these numbers, it doesn't matter. Changing the version, the W here, and the M here will let you either upgrade the post to a higher level of Mastercam or downgrade the post to a lower level of Mastercam, with the caveat that if you go to a lower version and you use parameters, some of those parameter numbers might not exist, or they may be a different value. So just be aware of that. The I and O at the end of the line have a little bit of significance. These are used to enable or disable specific functionality. So probing can be enabled or disabled in a post through the use of those parameters at the end. Now that's Renishaw Productivity Plus probing, which is a module that's inside Mastercam, which is a different thing from creating a custom drill cycle to output a probing macro. So if you're just modifying a drill cycle to output a probing macro, you don't need to worry about setting these values. And in fact, don't mess with the values unless you know what you're doing. After the post version line, we have a series of comments. You should always go through and read these comments in any post that you're working on. I mean, it's not critical, but I really recommend it. And the reason being that you can often gain some knowledge about how the post is set up or different functions that are available. So as we go through and read this, post name, generic Haas 3x mil, product mil, machine name Haas, control name Haas, 4-axis and axis substitution, no. There's no support for 4-axis or axis substitution in this post, which means if I have heavily modified this post for my 3-axis Haas, and then someone says, hey, we just got a 4th axis, we just put it on the machine, go make a program for it, you're actually going to want to copy the changes out of the 3-axis post and put them into a 4-axis post, because the difference between a 3-axis post and a 4-axis post is fairly significant in the structure and in the existing post blocks that you have to work with. For that reason, if you're working on a 3-axis post and there's ever a chance that it could be a 4-axis post, just start with a 4-axis post, and if you need 3-axis output, force 3-axis. If you need 4-axis output, force 4-axis output. It's actually really easy to do. Let me show you how. See how we're doing on time. I'm going to grab the generic Haas 4x mil post. So we'll go to our machine menu and we will load generic Haas 4x mil. And I'll create what I call the post developer's rectangle, which is a rectangle with a contour toolpath on it, and we'll post it out. Generic Haas 4x mil post. And here's our code. And we get an A0 to position our rotary. And now the foreman comes up and he's yelling at you because every time the guy goes to run the program, he hits the A0 and he gets an error because they took the 4th axis table off. Okay, so now he wants a whole new post that only does 3-axis output. But the reality is that's not needed. The machine definition has a function that is read by the post to determine for a 4-axis post, is there or is there not a rotary axis present? So I'm going to go to the machine menu and select the machine definition manager. Oh, in the right spot. Yeah, machine definition. This takes a second to load. So the machine definition itself is a kinematic tree of components. And kinematics means motion. So this describes the axes that are on our machine and how they sit and move on top of each other. And based on how we have this arranged, we eventually create what is called an axis combination. And the axis combination tells the toolpaths, number one. So as you're programming and you go to select a toolpath, Mastercam has logic in the background that actually looks to see, is the toolpath that I'm attempting compatible with my machine? So if I'm going to go start a multi-axis toolpath and I've only got a 3-axis mill, it's going to give me a warning. Same with 4-axis. And you can see here that our axis combination just says default, and it's got X, or it's got Y, X, A, and Z. Each of these branches in the tree must end in either a fixture holding component, so a fixture or work holding component, or a tool holding component like the spindle. What I'm going to do is right click and select new axis combination. It's got default 2 selected here. I'm going to right click and select rename. I'm going to call this 3-axis. And for 3-axis, I'm going to select Y, then X, and then the mill machine table, because that's a work holding component. And you notice that now the A and the fixture are disabled. And then I'll choose Z and the spindle. So this is XYZ. This one I'm going to rename, and I'm going to make it 4-axis. Whichever is listed at the top is going to be your default. So you need to decide, do you want your default to be 3 and you're going to always enable 4, or do you want the default to be 4 and you're going to switch it to 3 when appropriate? Doesn't really matter, but you've got to remember to switch it. Unfortunately, on an operation by operation basis, I don't believe you can choose axis combinations yet in edit general parameters, unfortunately, or edit common parameters. So I'll make my 4-axis the default. I'm just going to left click, hold, and drag it up top and let go. And now I'll save my machine definition manager and I'll do the replacement. If I were to just post out now, I'd get the same output, because what I need to do is go into the parameters and go to my axis combinations, and you can see here that 4-axis is selected. So if I double click them to open them up, you can actually see the which axes are which. I'm going to select 3-axis, hit OK, regenerate, and repost. You can see here, here's the old code. You can see the A0. Do you want to reload it? Yes. No A. Simple as that. If I want rotary, I select 4-axis, regen, repost, and my A comes back. So that's just one example of logic that already exists inside the 4-axis post that is ready and available for you to take advantage of, but you have to know about it. You have to know it exists, number one, and how to use it, number two. So we're going to be, I'm sure, discovering all kinds of cool little things like that, as we go through this course. Where is the logic in the post to take advantage of the axis combinations? If I go and pull up generic Haas 4x mil post, now I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because we're actually going to spend more time on it later, but it's a good question, and I always believe that a good question deserves an answer. So if you scroll way down in the post, past most of the stuff, past the can text, past the coolant stuff, that's when you get down to the cut type, all this stuff, and this is all calculations, but the machine stuff happens down at the bottom. So down here where it says parameter read post blocks, what kicks this off is the reading of the 950 line. So whenever you see the NCI 950, that calls P-Sync lathe. And P-Sync lathe calls P-Set machine. So whenever you see a post block call here with just a P and no equal sign or nothing, usually that's a jump. So we're gonna do Control F, and we're gonna jump down to P-Set machine. Okay, so here it says set post switches by reading machine depth parameters. Rot axis count 0. Rotary axis arrow 0. Rotary axis 0. Turn off rotary axis unless it is detected in the machine read. Suppress rotary output in 3-axis machines. So in other words, it's off by default. And then we go through and we try and see if you've got a rotary axis present, and in fact it checks to see if there's more than one, and if there's more than one it throws an error. Where does that happen? It happens here. So first we set read machine ent_no, which is a helper variable, to the value of sync axis. So basically we say, what's the current axis combination that we're using with this particular toolpath? And then it calls RDMD. RDMD is a command variable that says call pMachineInfo. So now pMachineInfo kicks off. pMachineInfo gets read for every machine parameter. And there's like 10,000 of them. Okay? So this is going to run in a loop. And it loops through each of the machine parameters. And here's the logic for counting the rotary axis. If param code equals 19958, which is the parameter code for a rotary axis, we say component type equals rpar s parameter 1. What this does is rpar is a function that converts a string value into a numeric value. So we set the value of component type by reading the parameter string. If component type equals 5, rot axis count equals rot axis count plus 1. So basically every time we find a component where the parameter code is 19958, we get the value from the parameter string and load it as a number into component type. We check to see if component type is 5, and if it is 5, we increment by 1 the rotary axis count. So the first time that we hit this parameter, this now equals 1 because it starts at 0. So rot axis count equals rot axis count 0 plus 1. So the first time it runs, first time we find 19958 where the component type is 5, we set this value to 1. as we continue to process every parameter through, well, every machine parameter through P machine info, if this happens again and we find one more where the component type is equal to 5, we're going to take 1 equals 1 plus 1, it's going to set it to 2, and if rotax count equals 2, we throw the error. Post only supports one rotary per axis combination. Now, there's more to it than that, obviously. I mean, for counting the rotaries, that's all the logic. There's some more logic in here for determining if we are a horizontal or a vertical machine, and there's some logic that sets the axis of rotation based off the rotary component, but the logic to A, determine if we have one rotary is here, and the logic to test for the error condition, which is more than one rotary, is built in as well. So there's actually this little block of code performs two functions, and the way it performs those functions is by looping. P machine info gets called for every parameter, and there's like 10,000 of them. So it's going to call this like 10,000 times, and it happens in like half a second because computers are so quick these days. It's just like, boop, just done. Okay. But you asked, so thought I'd give you the quick, 3-minute rundown version, or probably 10-minute actually, of where is that logic. Okay. Whew, we're running a little over tonight, which is okay, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the night. Let's go ahead and open it up for any questions while we're here. Nice. Lord Wutkiss in the chat window posted a link to a thread. Good call on that. So there's a forum topic in eMastercam that you guys are welcome to use to ask questions in when we're not in class. Not that you can't email me, but I really like the idea of asking it in the discussion forum, because other people will get to benefit from me answering the question, because they'll get to see your question and my answer. So rather than just email me questions, I'd love it if we could all participate in that discussion thread. I think that's a great idea. So thanks again for mentioning that. Let's see. Jeremy asks, I didn't see XNCI mentioned in the variables section of the reading. Would you typically use XNCI with previous $? You wouldn't typically use XNCI at all. Normally you'd use it if you needed to compare rounded values or unrounded values. Previous $? Is always going to be rounded. Current value of $? May or may not be rounded. XNCI is one of those things where sometimes, for whatever reason, you need a variable that's more precise than the variable that's formatted for output. I'll see if I can come up with a good idea of why you would need that. I mean, honestly, I've used the NCI values probably 2 or 3 times over the years. It's not common. Office hours. Good point. I was going to send out an email anyway, but thanks to the reminder. Office hours is going to be this Saturday. I think we're going to plan for, I don't know, probably like 2 p.m. this Saturday Eastern time. I think that'd be 11 a.m. I mean, what's better for you guys? Is it better early morning, late morning, early afternoon? I know a lot of you guys are on the West Coast. I'm not a super morning guy, so 11 a.m. Eastern's probably the earliest I do it, which is 8 a.m. Saturday Pacific time. So let's do this. Let's say 1 p.m. Eastern. Late morning, yeah. Let's do 11:30. Okay. And this week, probably do an hour and a half and just call it good with the one session. Next week, what we'll probably do is either do a Wednesday or a Friday for 1 hour and Saturday for 1 hour. So next week, I'll break up the office hours into 2 separate sessions. That way, if somebody can't do the Saturday, we can still try to fit one in during the week. Yeah, so that's what we'll do. So 11:30 this Saturday, we'll do the office hours, and I'll send out an email reminder to everybody. There you go. Awesome. You're on it, man. Sweet. Okay. Same web. Yeah, we'll be using the same webinar link for the office hours. I don't see any reason to clutter it up with multiples. And I'll include that in this. So I'll send out an email. I don't know if I'll get it out tonight. It'll probably be tomorrow, honestly. Yeah, so that's a good question, Kate. Kate's asking, what are the sort of things we should bring up during the office hours? Questions regarding our posts we are working on or topics we'd like to know more about. Really, it's both. Number one, which is questions regarding the post you're working on, is typically what that time is set aside for. Really, it's open question and answer, and I try to leave it loosely defined because really, I want to help you guys solve your problems, whatever those are. So, if it's a 5-axis post question, I'll try to at least give you some guidance. We're not going to go through and do the configuration of an entire 5-axis post because that's just not what office hours is for. If you're working on a 5-axis post and you've got a specific question, sure, I'll be happy to help you through that. Depending, if it's like, well, I got a 5-axis post and I need to implement tilted work planes. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of work. So that would be something that we would look at in the 5-axis class. But if you're like, well, I've already been working on implementing something, here's the specific issue I'm having problems with, that's the type of thing that I look to help you guys with. And I'm also, keep in mind, I'm also taking things from all the people too. So I will tend to take, I don't want to say the easy stuff, but the stuff that I can solve in 10 to 20 minutes of demonstration. I mean, sometimes it's like a 1 or 2 minute answer. Hey, I want to do this. Okay, cool. We're going to do that. What have we covered in the past? Comments is a big one. I've already gotten on the questionnaire that I sent out a lot of questions about comments, manual entry, how do I separate the comments? And so we'll definitely spend some time working with comments. I typically do feed rate output as variables because I think it makes for a nice, a little demo that I can do in like a half an hour where I show you some really cool, interaction of changing some values in the post, adding some miscellaneous integers and real numbers, and really kind of significantly affecting the NC file output without too much work inside the post. So we'll do some of that stuff, but again, really it's open question and answer time. Now, as far as what I like to see, if you're going to ask me questions about your post that you're having an issue with, please send me a zip-to-go file. Don't just, send me your post with nothing, right? I need a good Mastercam file, not something with 10,000 operations in it. Don't send me, a 500 gigabyte file and say, hey, I'm having a problem on line, 2,542,000 where it's going to take us all day to debug. Get rid of all the clutter. If possible, just have a couple of operations. Something simple to really show the problem of, hey, I'm trying to get output here, and especially with like manual entry, that stuff comes up all the time because you have to know how comments are processed by MP to be able to really not only output kind of what you want, but where you want it. Because a lot of times we need to capture comments and hold on to them and not output them till later. And we'll show you how to do that. Can Code Expert be used without Mastercam installed, like on a home computer? I want to say yes, but I want to say that you actually have to install Mastercam. I'm not sure if it comes with the HLE, to be honest. I really don't know. It's been a while since I've even used the HLE because the HLE doesn't post. So that is one limitation. The HLE, I think if it does post, it like rounds everything to like 1 decimal place or something, or 2 decimal places, so that you can't use it. So yeah, I wouldn't even bother using the HLE version. But what I think you can do, Jeremy, is I think you can actually run the Mastercam installation and just not use your HASP. Let me check. You know what? Yeah. Yeah, I think the real answer for that is that you can install Mastercam without actually having a HASP on your computer. And I believe at that point Code Expert will run, but you're going to have to launch it manually. To launch it manually, now don't quote me on that because I may be wrong, honestly, but I believe you can do that. You would actually go to your C drive, program files, Mastercam, whatever your version is, let's do 2018, extensions. So it's the extensions folder inside your Mastercam installation folder, and that's where you're going to find Code Expert. So I think, like I said, you'll have to launch it manually, but I know you don't have to have a HASP on the computer to run Code Expert. I've just unplugged my HASP, and here it is running. And Bill post files, and it'll open it up. So yeah, so like I said, get the download for Mastercam and just run the Mastercam download and then use it like that. Kate also says Notepad++ isn't a terrible alternative. I really like Notepad++. I use it myself. It's a good editor. I even believe, I think Gunther, who's one of the guys who's on the forum, has a custom code file that for Notepad++ that has all of the syntax highlighting. One of the nicest things about the Code Expert editor is that it does do the syntax highlighting. So it'll recognize the predefined variables, post blocks, and functions, and it will do code autocomplete. So you start typing and it'll give you a list of all of the predefined post blocks, strings, variables, operators, and you actually have filters down here. So if you want to get rid of everything except operators, for example, I just turned off variable strings and post blocks, and you can see that starting with turn, we have tan, which is the tangent function. We have turn, cycle the stack records, and we have t-list, get the tool list info. So, great functionality. Yeah, and the little inline help that it pops up is great. So you can select each one of these things, and it gives you a little instant help pop up that has really good info as you're working through it. So, good points. Will we be going over using the debugger? No, it's a piece of crap. Just kidding. Yes. Actually, we'll be covering that next week, next Monday. It's really kind of the next. Usually I like to go through the section we're going through right now, which is kind of the introduction section, get that all out of the way, and then we'll jump into using the debugger. I like the debugger for a lot of things, except for debugging 5-axis. I just find that with the 5-axis post, there's so much stuff that's encrypted and so many jumps that happen. I prefer to debug using a couple of techniques that I'll show you all. It's a little different, mostly using string literals to mark the position, and then the tilde character to do debugging. But we'll get into that during the whole debugging section. So we got, we're definitely going over the debugger and debugging techniques as well. So, all right. I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Notepad++ is, I want to say notepad++.org. Yeah, notepad-plus-plus.org. Oh, Gunther's extension, yeah. Yeah, Gunther does X+. Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, I guess if you guys want to continue discussion, go ahead and do that on the Mastercam forum topic for that. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the broadcast and shut down the class for tonight. So, thanks everybody. It's great having you in class, and we'll see you guys Saturday, 11:30 Eastern, and I'll expect another email tomorrow. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great night. Yep. Okay. Good night, everybody. Have a good one. See ya.